Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Welcome, friends, to this Sunday afternoon Dhamma discussion, and we are continuing our study or look at the verses in the Dhammapada. The last time we met, I think 2 weeks ago, we began the chapter 20, or the Magga Vagga, the chapter on the path. And basically that path is the Noble Eightfold Path. And the first few verses that we went over were about the Noble Eightfold Path being the best of paths. Because the Noble Eightfold Path leads only to one place, that is the liberation from all the levels of suffering. Whereas other paths through the forest, or through the mountains, through the swamps, they lead to all kind of different, destinations. Some people will get lost on the path, or find their death on the path, or get attacked by lions or something. But this path of the Eightfold Path leads only to one place, and that is Nibbana. So these next verses, these 3 verses that I want to go over today, are very popular verses, and ones that I recite quite often at the end of our meditation sessions. And this is also the path, connected with the path. So I'm going to recite these 3 verses, although most of you have heard them before. Sabbe sankhara anicchati yada panyaya pasati atanibindati dukkhi ismaggo visuddhiya. Sabbe dhamma sabbe sankhara dukkati yada panyaya pasati atanibindati dukkhi ismaggo visuddhiya. Sabbe dhamma anattati yada panyaya pasati atanibindati dukkhi ismaggo visuddhiya. So the translation of those verses are that all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity. In the same way, all conditioned things lead to sorrow, or are fraught with suffering. When one sees this with wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity. And the third verse, Sabbi Dhamma Anattati Yada Panyaya Pasati. So all Dhammas are without any owner or controller, or they are not self. When one sees this with wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity. Now, these three verses are similar, but each one is, they're expressing that all things are impermanent, all impermanent things, when clung to with ignorance, bring suffering, and that all things are not self. Now, in some translations, the word anatta is sometimes translated as no soul. And I'll get to that a little bit later, but I don't really care for that translation, no soul, because it's a little bit misleading. Because a lot of people are confused about what the soul is. I mean, it's bantered around a lot, and used by different religions, but I think most people don't really know what it is. But, it refers to basically there's no owner or controller within our consciousness or within this body-mind process, no permanent owner or controller. So I prefer that translation as opposed to just saying all things are no soul. So it's a little bit more clear that none of these things, the five aggregates, we don't own them or don't control them. Now, so what are all these conditioned things? Well, we've been talking about that quite a bit. They are none other than the five aggregates. So all the material forms, all the material vibrations, the feelings they produce in the mind, the perceptions, that means the thought, memory, pictures, the mental pictures and the identifications of objects, and our reactions to them, and then, of course, the consciousness that is normally imbued or infused with this illusion of I, me, or mine that comes up with each moment of consciousness. So all the sankharas is a very loaded term. And basically it means everything in existence, everything that's produced from a cause. And that means everything in existence that belongs to the five aggregates. So it includes all the elements of matter and the mind and all the mental activities and so on. Basically, everything except nibbana is a sankhara, to kind of keep it simple. Sankhara is the unconditioned state. It was never born. Nibbana is the unconditioned state that was never born and never dies. Everything else has a birth and a death because it's conditioned and it's made from something else. That means it's a composite. So the five aggregates are composites. That's why they're called aggregates, actually. The aggregate, the accumulation of material vibrations, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, emotions, habits, and the ego-dominated consciousness. And these are the things that we take to be I, me, or mine, or myself. because we look at the body, this physical body, and we say, that's me, this is my body. And the same with my feelings. I am happy, I am sad, I have this or that emotion, and I am conscious, I am hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking. So it's these, they're called the aggregates of clinging, because we cling to them as being I, me, or mine. Now, the Buddha still had 5 aggregates, but he didn't have clinging to them, and they weren't causing him suffering. So that's why there's a qualification of the 5 aggregates of clinging. So anybody who's not an arahant still has aggregates of clinging. Only the arahant is somebody who is not clinging to those aggregates, because any sense of I, me, or mine has been eliminated from the consciousness. Now, so, I mean, when we say all things are impermanent, I mean, I've, given this talk quite a number of times, and I'm sure you've heard many of that by others as well. But, impermanence is on 2 levels. The external level, where we see the material world, our physical body, we know that it's born and is subject to sickness, disease, old age, and death. And all the objects in the world, all the animal bodies are, born, last a short period of time and die according to their lifespan. And even material things, plants born and die, even planets, now they're, solar systems even are born and dying, right? They're trying to find the exact moment that the Earth was born and may die, or now even world systems and suns, right? So even they have a birth and a death, and there's causes and conditions for all of that. None of these things exist independently by themselves or live for eternity. Now, they may live for a very long period of time, but still, at some point, they're impermanent, and we can't control them. We can't control this earth, can we? When we try to, scientists are trying to control the earth, the weather, earthquakes, and volcanoes and all kinds of things. We can't control them. We try to predict when they'll happen. But so anyway, that's why there's all these conditioned things are impermanent. And then also this anicca, dukkha, and anatta, they're given in this order for a reason too. Even though people can contemplate them separately, but the Buddha always, when he mentioned things in a certain order in the suttas, this for a purpose. And it's because each one is kind of a stepping stone. It helps provide a stepping stone to understand the next one, because it's a little bit more difficult to understand. Each of those following steps, whether it's the Eightfold Path, it's the 4 foundations of mindfulness, it's the 7 factors of enlightenment, it's the 4 jhanas, all these things are given in the order because the first one helps to lead to the second stage and to the succeeding ones. So I mentioned that the anicca, impermanence, to the external world, and then also more importantly, the internal world. That means our mind. That means the feelings, perceptions, mental activities, and the moments of consciousness. These are also undergoing impermanence. And the mind changes even much faster than the body. We say the body changes, and we, of course, looking at ourselves in the mirror, you don't notice much changes, in just a few days or perhaps even a few weeks, but you do see changes, of course, your hair grows out quite quickly and so on, or other things change. But in terms of like getting older, and maybe every 5 years, or, you see some differences. But the mind is changing much, much faster than the body. Of course, under the skin, you feel all the changing sensations. That is the body changing on a kind of a molecular, cellular level. So the external changes are not so apparent, but the internal changes are much quicker. And then the flow of our thoughts and the moments of consciousness that are coming and going. So normally we don't see that so obviously. So anyway, when you contemplate the impermanence, you can see that everything, comes and goes and is subject to decay and death. Okay, you can accept that. And the Buddha, the Buddha was kind of used, I guess, deductive reasoning. And so he was explaining this Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta to the monks. And he asked them, what do you think, monks? Is the body and all the sensory objects, is that permanent or impermanent? And they said, well, impermanent, Venerable Sir. I mean, it's obvious, right? Things are changing. And of course, they contemplated that for some time too. So they, answered, oh, they're impermanent. Oh, yeah, all material things all conditioned things are impermanent. So now he got them to admit that they're impermanent. So he's kind of like putting them, backing them into a corner, right? They've all admitted now that conditioned things are impermanent. So he asked them then, well, what is impermanent and subject to arising and vanishing, birth and death? Is that something agreeable and pleasant that brings happiness? Or is it something that brings sorrow? And of course, most of them are probably thinking about their family members and, maybe their brothers, sisters, aunts and uncles, friends got killed even when they were children or when they were adolescents, and they grieved and so on. Or their pet dog or cat or cows or whatever, when they got sick and died and so on, and affected their livelihood, or also the impermanence, you get a cyclone that blows your house away and so on. So he was saying, are these impermanent things? Is it a source of happiness? And he said, no. So that's the sabbe sankhara dukkhati. If you cling to them, so if you cling to things that are impermanent, they bring suffering. Now, a lot of people will say, well, they're impermanent, but I like them anyway. They bring me They bring me pleasure. Yeah, they bring you pleasure while they're lasting, but when they stop, they bring you suffering. Now, we can see this clearly with people addicted to drugs, right? So they're suffering, they take drugs to remove that suffering, but when the drug wears off, they're suffering again. And then, of course, the same with everything else, whether it's your health or the health and lives of your loved ones and friends. So that's how we contemplate this. And it's referring also to these 5 aggregates, that they're always changing and really beyond our control. Most people can't control their thoughts. Let's take, for example, people who have bipolar disorder. They widely swing between really extreme, vibrations of consciousness and so on. But even without those extremes, most of them are changed because they're conditioned. We get happy or sad depending on, whether we get the objects that we want or not. So this, so he asked the monks, are all these conditioned things, is it a source of sorrow or happiness? And they said, sorrow, Venerable Sir. So now he pushed them further into the corner. He got them to admit to two things, that all conditioned things are impermanent. Because they're impermanent, they cannot be a source of happiness, and they become a source of sorrow ultimately. And we don't deny that they don't bring some fleeting pleasure, but because we can't control them, they're subject to change and passing away. And then we usually grieve if you have attachment. And that's why they're called the aggregates of clinging, our suffering, because we cling to them. And as we studied before in the last, one of the last sutta classes on the contemplation of the six senses, right? I mean, everything that we experience is coming through one or other of the six senses every, second of the day, a microsecond. And the mind is grasping at them over and over again. So now, having got the monks to admit that all conditioned things are impermanent, permanent things are a source of sorrow, again, if you cling to them. But most people have clinging, except the arahants, so you can just say they are a source of sorrow. And as we learned in the very first noble truth, the Buddha said, in short, these five aggregates of clinging are the dukkha. So the third verse, the Buddha changes. First two verses used all conditioned things, sabbe sankhara, anicca, and dukkha. Now in the third verse, he uses sabbe dhamma. Now, you might have heard from other teachers or in other some books, usually when some people use the word dhamma or the sankhara, they're referring to like the 52 chaitasikas of the mind. Of course, they are sankhara. And then some teachers say that when they say sabbe dhamma, it includes the five aggregates. But the problem is that the five aggregates are also sankharas. Five aggregates are also conditioned things. So why would the Buddha say sabbe dhamma anattati? So he uses sankhara for anicca and dukkha, but he uses dhamma for anatta. And this is the way that I've learned to understand that verse, or at least makes more sense, is because you see, the Buddha was brought up in that time where the atta, the idea of supreme self or soul, was a popular belief. Of course, it still is in many parts of the world, and in India too, the Atman. So the Buddha wanted to sort of counter that, and he introduced the idea of anatta. Because the Atman is sometimes referred to as like something eternal, or somebody has this eternal self or soul in them. I mean, that's one belief. But the Buddha saw that any eternal sense of I or me or identity is not eternal. And there is no owner or controller within this body and mind. But people wanted to cling to that idea of I am Brahma. There's a term, aham asmi, aham Brahma asmi, or something, I am Brahma. lot of, some sayings, I am God, I am that, and so on. So Buddha saw there was a danger in clinging to that subtle sense of I. So he introduced this term Anatta, to that even the eternal Nibbana is not a self or a soul. Some people have the idea, oh, I'm going to go to Nibbana for eternity. No. No one goes to Nibbana, because if you have a self or a soul that's going somewhere, you're not going to Nibbana. You might be going to a formless jhana or a formless realm or a deva realm, but you're not going to Nibbana. No one goes to Nibbana, because only when the self, the clinging to self and individuality has been totally eradicated with the Arahant stage, then only the mind will reach the final liberation. So to differentiate this idea that not even cling to the idea of the eternal as being anything I or me connected with an I. So he wanted to stress that by saying sabbe dhamma anatta. Because even the Dhamma is called that's called the unconditioned Dhamma. So Nibbana is also called Amatta Dhamma. That means the deathless state. Dhamma means a state. And there's Sankhata Dhamma, which means conditioned states. And there's Asankhata Dhamma, which means the unconditioned state. But there's only one Asankhata Dhamma, and that is Nibbana, according to the Buddhist teaching and the Abhidhamma. Now, other people can make up their own theories and disagree, but we're talking about the Buddha's teaching here, and that's what we generally understand. So, to differentiate that all the conditioned dhammas are anicca and dukkha, but Nibbana is not dukkha. Nibbana is not anicca and it's not dukkha. That's why he didn't want to include Nibbana in the first two phrases. So he used the term sankhara. And he used the term Dhamma specifically to refer to the unconditioned Dhamma also is not yourself. Even that is not your soul. So, because again, he was speaking to Brahmins and others who held those viewpoints. So he was trying to drill home a point in that by saying that. So the Buddha, once he had the monks admit to all things are impermanent, and all impermanent things bring suffering, then he asked them, okay, if all things are impermanent and all things are a source of suffering, is it right to call them, this is me, this is mine, this is myself? Of course, somebody would say, yeah, sure, why not? Well, the Buddha was a little bit more introspective than that. So he saw that it's, because if you call something mine, from the Dhamma point of view, it would imply that you own it or you can control it. I mean, that was the definition of self in those days. Nowadays, of course, it's never even brought up in terms of any type of discussions normally, right? But normally when we say something is I, me, or mine, from the Dhamma point of view, it should mean that you own it and you can control it. But we see we don't own this body. We don't own our possessions. We think we do, but we can't control them because they also come and go according to the laws of impermanence. So that's how the Buddha used his sort of, I guess you'd call it deductive reasoning. Maybe there's another term for it. But and how he got and so when the Buddha asked him, is it right to call these things, the five aggregates, or even Nibbana, as this is mine, this is myself, this is my soul? And they said, no, Venerable Sir. Of course, many of them were arhants already, so naturally they're going to say that. They're disciples of the Buddha. But anyway, that's how the Buddha wanted people to contemplate these things. Now, if you immediately tell somebody, "Oh, there's no owner or controller," naturally they're going to take offense from that. So first, you point out to them how things are impermanent. Does everything change? I mean, every single cell of our body is changing all the time. You can't control them. Your hair grows out according to its nature. Your nails grow out. Your teeth decay. Everything happens, is undergoing change. And, we can try to stop things for a while, but generally we can't. Ultimately, we can't. So you get people to contemplate. Well, yeah, that's right. This body really isn't really mine. I mean, we didn't ask for it, right? The parents, produced this body from their DNA, so to speak. And of course, we understand that the consciousness coming from a past life was looking for a place to take root again. But anyway, so by understanding that everything changes in the material world, not only our body, but everything else, anybody can say, yeah, okay, yeah, I know things are impermanent. So that's the easiest thing to understand. But then you ask them, are things suffering? And then they'll take offense. No, I get so much pleasure out of my children, out of my job, out of my whatever, and so on. Yeah, as long as everything is going good, right? And then what happens when things change? And they say, well, that's just the nature of life. It's no big deal, whatever. So, the Buddha was talking at a much kind of deeper level than the ordinary type of people when they think about these things. Because most people don't even think about them. They don't want to think about them because if they think too much about them, they realize, oh, yeah, it's true. And that's why the Dhamma is called ehipassiko, come and see. That's a popular term in the Pali language, ehipassiko, come and see. Inviting one to come and see, to look inside of oneself or in the world around to see how these things are impermanent. And all impermanent things, if you cling to them with attachment and depend on them for your happiness, you're going to be disappointed. Or you're going to be in a constant search for something else to replace it. See, that's the thing. Things are impermanent, but it's okay. It breaks, I'll buy a new one. In a car crash, I'll go buy a new one, right? So this idea we could just replace things. So, it doesn't matter if they're impermanent. I don't want to suffer. I'll just go buy something new, right? Well, what if you don't have the means to buy something new, right? Then you might take to go out and steal something or to kill somebody else to get it. And then you're going to get the suffering that comes from those things. So all these things are very compounded. The Dhamma is a very deep and profound, kind of description of reality. So anyway, it's only when we contemplate these things, and more importantly, seeing them within our own mind and seeing how quickly our mind changes. And then anyway, so once you see that, clinging to impermanent things brings suffering. So eventually you have to admit it. And only then when you contemplate the idea, well, because they're impermanent, is there really any controller to this thing going on? Is there any owner, even to my consciousness? Is there really a permanent I or self in the consciousness? Of course, only that can be understood through meditation. That's why the Buddha didn't talk about Anatta right away. He had people contemplate Anicca, Dukkha first, and also like the 4 foundations of mindfulness, contemplating the body first, seeing how that's constantly changing. And then because the feelings and perceptions are dependent on the stream of sensory impingements through the body. So, and depend on the body, because when you die, this world disappears for all intents and purposes, right? So we need this body to experience the world. So when it dies, the world basically ceases for most people. And of course, the mind may go to some other world or come back again as a human being, but at least for that period of time, this world and earth has disappeared because it needs the nervous system and senses to have our feelings, perceptions, and the idea of myself in the world. So, and that can only be understood through deeper meditation. So and especially the anatta. So anicca and dukkha can be understood without really gaining, let's say, super deep, even without attaining jhanas necessarily, a person can understand anicca and dukkha on the relative plane, and even to some extent, even deeper in the mental plane. But the understanding of anatta will only come when one's concentration and detachment has gone very, very deep through either practicing vipassana or a combination of the samatha and vipassana, when the sense of self starts fading away. Because the sense of self, that means the feeling of I, me, or mine that's in our consciousness, depends on our identification with our feelings, perceptions, and volitions, and remembering our past and so on. So when that subsides by attaining jhanas, which can be done through practice of mindfulness too, then that sense of self starts fading away. And as we've already discussed it at other times, you come to a point where the feeling of I is, fades far back in the background, and the mind is no longer discriminating things or recognizing objects, and that there's a very bright awareness, but there's no sense of I, the meditator, so much. It's gotten very, very faint in the back of the mind. And so to maintain that state of awareness would require being in a state, some state of jhana kind of awareness, or an equivalent. Anyway, where at least the hindrances are not operating. So those three verses, and sometimes anicca, dukkha, anatta, I think in the Visuddhimagga, they are mentioned as the triple gateway to liberation. That means some people, after they've developed their meditation, they might specialize in focusing on anicca. But if you focus on anicca in the proper way, it leads to anatta, but you're using anicca as your primary focus of attention. But you've got to be in jhanic level awareness to see how the nanosecond arising and vanishing of mental states, and that you will realize anatta, but by focusing on anicca initially. So initially you take anicca. Or a person, it depends on a person's temperament. Some people might take dukkha as their starting point. Or, having understood anicca, of course, to a great extent, then they would just say, yeah, this is dukkha. This is just dukkha. Everything is dukkha. The five aggregates are dukkha. Can't control them, and so dukkha becomes your means of detachment. Again, all of these things, anicca, dukkha, anatta, they must lead to the mind detaching itself from its clinging and identification to any of the six senses or the five aggregates. That detachment and separation has to come. So it can come through the focus on anicca. It can come through the focus on dukkha, or can come on the focus of anatta. But usually they're all kind of bound up together. There's no need to really separate them, but for one purpose or another, a person could, at least for kind of a starting point. But once you realize one, you're going to realize the other ones too. But usually in that order, because it's easiest to realize the anicca, and then the dukkha, and then the anatta. But people with accumulated wisdom from previous lives or whatever, or their they might straight away be able to get into anatta without contemplating too much anicca and dukkha, but probably not the majority of people. So those are the path. That's the path. And the whole Noble Eightfold Path is about realizing anicca, dukkha, and anatta. These are the hallmark of the Buddhist teaching. That, other teachings here and there may kind of mention these things in passing, but to make them the real cornerstone of the wisdom teachings, especially the Anatta, that's unique really to the Buddha's teaching, because he laid out the steps very clearly on how to train the mind to understand that. Because it's only in understanding the anatta through that letting go, the clinging to even our own consciousness, that we can experience that deathless state, that we can shift, a paradigm shift from conditioned consciousness to unconditioned awareness. That's a total paradigm shift in the consciousness. And it can't be done by just theoretical thinking and reasoning. It has to be done by developing the powers of mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Okay, so that's a very big subject, of course, but I think I might bring this discussion, or at least my talk, to an end, and see if anybody might have some questions based on any of those things. See if there's any. Nothing in the chat group. See, Anatta. Okay, no questions.
Bhante, I have a question.
Okay.
My question, since I have also studied Hinduism, what you were talking about, Brahma, I am Brahma. And in the Hindu religion, we strongly believe in the existence of the soul, the Atman, right? So my question is, if according to Buddhism, if there is no Atman, how do you explain reincarnation or rebirth?
Well, that is a fairly common question. And it's easy to explain. I mean, first of all, you said that the Hindus, before maybe you believed in Atman, but generally they believe in the soul. Why do you believe it? Have you seen it? How do you believe it? Because it's written in the text, it's written in the books, or because the guru said it? How do you really know? And the Buddha asked himself that question when he meditated. And when he attained that transcendence to the deathless state, he realized that all that individual identity that anyone could call to be saying, this is my soul, has vanished. So that's how he, came to that understanding. And just the fact that you cling to this, even the idea of a supreme self, there's still some little clinging to that. So the Buddha wanted to remove, pull the rug out from under the feet, so there's no clinging, because even that tiny clinging to an I or a self is the reason for rebirth. because that's the flame of consciousness that will seek out again and again and again, or eternal existence, what they might believe is an eternal existence in the Brahma realm, but even the Buddha said that's not really eternal, but that's another story. But anyway, this is the contemporary example that I like to explain when people ask me this question: how can rebirth depend on a self for a soul? So the analogy is of these modern cell phones. So let's say if you want to call somebody, you're in America here, you want to call somebody in India, and there's 1 billion people in India, they all have a cell phone. So you got 1 billion numbers to choose from, but you punch in 9 or 10 numbers, and somehow within a couple of seconds, some invisible energy goes out and finds that particular cell phone in somebody's pocket, halfway around the world, it finds that cell phone. Now, do you have to have a soul for that? No, you got a temporary number, maybe, but there's no soul that went there. So the same way, our mind is like this telephone number, and the accumulated karma that we have in it is like your area code. And so when you die, if your karma is destined to be born as a human being again, you get the area code of a human being. If you're destined to be reborn as an animal, and I use that destiny kind of lightly and not predetermined necessarily, but karmic energized. If that is to be drawn to an animal birth, that's a different area code. And if you're destined to a Deva realm, that's a different area code. And there's 15 or 20 Deva realms, each has their own area code. Or hell or heavens have their own area code. And that's dependent on your accumulated karma, not a self for a soul. And that magnetic energy, when this cell phone of the body, that means this physical body, like the case of your cell phone, whether your SIM card, your battery goes dead, your heart goes dead, right? It dies. So you cannot use the cell phone anymore. You cannot use the body. That energy goes out. This is where maybe the analogy doesn't work exactly, but anyway, it's a good approximate kind of thing. So anyway, you call somebody and you punch in the area code for India, and it goes there. But then each person has their individual karma. So you got 1 billion people, 7 billion people born on Earth. They had the area code of Earth as their karmic destiny. But each person has their individual number, which means what kind of a person they'll be, what kind of a life they'll have. They're going to be a male, a female, in between, rich, poor, healthy, sickly, all these things are dependent on karma. So that happens without a soul. And that can happen without a soul because more or less it's kind of a mechanical process. It is complicated. So there's no perfect explanation, but that would be the closest explanation we can get. How does rebirth take place without there being a soul? And it's like, there's another analogy of a candle flame. You have a candle burning and you have a new candle that's not burning yet. So you stick the wick of the new candle into the flame of the old candle. And then this new candle now is lit by the old candle, but there's nothing that really passed over. Like there's no soul or self that went into the new candle or the new candle flame. So that's how one of the examples of how we try to explain this idea that rebirth can take place without any kind of permanent individual type of self or soul.
So, Bhante, what you're saying is that reincarnation, in other words, according to Buddhism, is your karma?
Yes, it's consciousness that's been energized by ignorance. Yes, it's the consciousness, the aggregate of consciousness that has been, conditioned by ignorance and with all of its attachments and memories and so on. That's a very powerful energy. And so to think that at the time of death, it just goes poof into nothing is wishful thinking, really. Anybody with a scientific mind we shouldn't, kind of think that. I mean, that's not very scientific. But anyway, because no energy is lost, right? There's a saying, I'm not a scientist, but, no energy is lost. It's just transformed. So that's the same thing. When you die, nothing is lost. It gets transformed into another source of energy that comes out as another life form. Anyway, this is a very, deep subject. And
Yes, Bhante. It's confusing. It is confusing, yeah.
that's why only in meditation, when you understand and you experience a total transcendence of ego consciousness and you experience this radical, deathless awareness, then all your questions will be answered. Arms aside. Focus the attention at the feet pressing the floor. And begin taking some deep, slow breaths. After breathing in, hold the air in the lungs for 2, 3, or 4 seconds to feel that pause. And feel the contracting, relaxing sensations of the out breath. Feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. And the next in breath. Just take a few more deep, slow breaths. Cultivating this mindfulness. And breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past or future. Breathing out, standing here and now. On the next in-breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms. Look up at the hand. Out breath, turn the palms down, touch the top of the head. Again, in-breath, palms up, straighten the arms. Bend back a little bit. Out breath, touch the top. Third time, in breath. Release the fingers. Out breath, arms back to the sides. Relax. Feel the increased sensation. Just let go of your thoughts. Just let the thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Just keep the sensations of the breathing body in the front of the awareness. Just remember standing. Face the clock toward me so I can see the time. Closer. And the next in breath, push up on the toes and raise the arms over the head in this way. facing the hands toward each other and stretch up. Out breath, come back down, arms to the side, heels to the floor. Use the breath to help lift up the body. In breath. Stretch. Out. Once more, in breath. Feel the increased sensation. All those sensations that you're feeling are impermanent, in a constant state of flux and change. All the cellular vibration. And next we'll do knee bending. On an in breath, push up on the toes, raise the arms up front. On the out breath, bend the knees, lower down, balancing on the balls of the feet. Down to the squatting position if you can. And a deep breath, lift up. Higher up on the toes. Again, out breath, squatting down. In. Out. In. Out breath, relax. Now spread the legs and feet apart, about 3 feet. We'll do side bending, keeping the hands at the sides. Breathe in. On an out breath, bend over the right side, let the right hand slide down by or below the knee. In breath, lift up. Pause for a moment, and the other side, out breath. In breath. Alternate sides like that 2 more times. The sound going through. Just feel the body exactly as it is, each foot pressing the floor, hands touching the side, clothing touching the skin, various subtle sensations, pulsation, the head balanced on top. Now place the hands at the chest, breathe in, hands over the head. On the out breath, hands to the chest, bend the knees, lower down. You keep the feet flat on the floor, the back upright. In breath all the way up. Out breath comes back to the side, relax. Just keep feeling the body here and now. Just contemplating, feeling the flow of impermanence, changing sensations, sounds coming and going, thoughts coming and going to the mind. Now bring the legs together. Standing straight with the head turning in breath, the head to the right. Try to look over behind the right shoulder. The out breath all the way back to the left. Look over behind the left shoulder. In breath to the right. Out breath left. In breath right. Out breath left. Let the head stop in the middle, relax. Feel the whole body. Remember standing, standing. Go ahead. Come back to our seats for meditation. Okay, friends, just try to get comfortable in your meditation seat. Try to align your spine and head in a straight line. Try to keep the chin lifted up level with the floor. Just gently close the eyes. Bring your total attention down to feel where your buttocks press the seat. Just feel that sensation of hardness, of pressure, earth vibration, when the buttocks press the seat. Just remind yourself of sitting, and kind of just feel the way your legs are bent underneath the body, and feel the feet and toes. Just try to feel some sensations in your feet and toes. Sensations of constant change or impermanence. You can just remember sitting. And now feel your hands and fingers touching. Where they touch together or they touch your legs. Try to feel the outline of your thumbs and fingers. The subtle pulsation. Now feel the weight of the arms hanging from the shoulders. Relax the shoulders. Feel where the clothing touches the skin of the shoulders, the arms. And just remember sitting. Now feel your head on top of the neck, just balanced on top of the neck, keeping the chin lifted up. And just feel the sensations on your face. Start to feel or imagine the skin stretched over the front of the skull, giving rise to so many sensations in your forehead, or nose, cheeks, lips, chin. And especially kind of just feel the lips touching together, where the upper lip touches the lower lip. And feel the sensation of either dryness or moistness in the lips. And feel the tongue laying in the mouth, where the tongue may touch some teeth. Now feel the eyes in the socket and the eyelids stretched over the eyeball. Just kind of get the idea that you're kind of just looking at your eyeballs with the inner eye of awareness. We look out of our eyeballs to the external world. We look with the eye of awareness to the internal world. Feel the sensations under the skin, or notice one's thoughts. Just keep the attention kind of centered there behind the eyes. And just try to feel the outline of the sitting body. Just that general sense of the head on top, and the arms and hands on the sides, the chest, legs and feet underneath. Not in any great detail, just that general sense of that silhouette outline of the sitting body. That's called expanding your awareness, expanded awareness. And just focusing on one particular thing to be able to have a wide angle awareness. And just keep remembering the sitting, sitting, sitting. It's the present moment of this body, the awareness keyed into the nervous system, feeling the cellular vibrations from all the different body parts, lighting up the web of the sitting body. Feel that flow of impermanence. Then begin taking some deep, slow breaths as we did during the yoga. Really take 3 or 4 seconds to expand your abdomen, rib cage, and upper chest, holding the air in for 3 or 4 seconds. Feel that subtle energy, and feel the relaxing contraction of the out breath, and the last bit of air go out of the lungs. And then the next in breath. And try to continue that deep, slow breathing several more times, cultivating this basic awareness of breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Now to develop a more continuous concentration, count the breaths from 1 to 10. Try to follow my counting if you can. Or if you have shorter breaths, it's okay. But with the next incoming breath, mentally count 1. Feel the brief pause with the contracting out breath. Count 1. The next in breath, 2. Out breath, 2. In breath, 3. Out breath, 3. In breath, 4. Out breath, 4. In breath, 5. Out breath, 5. In breath, 6. Out breath, 6. In breath, 7. Out breath, 7. In breath, 8. Out breath, 8. In breath, 9. Out breath, 9. In breath, 10. Out breath, 10. Now discontinue the counting. Let the breathing return to its uncontrolled, shorter rhythm. We continue to feel it. Keep the mind focused there, in the middle of the body, to feel the clothing touching the skin, the stomach, rib cage, the chest. It expands and contracts, or anything else to remind you that when you're breathing in and breathing out, just try to get the feeling that you're a scientist sitting in the laboratory looking down through a microscope. The microscope is our focused awareness. It's focused on the expanding and contracting breathing process. The focus of impermanence. Try to notice the 4 phases of each breath cycle. The expanding in breath, brief pause, the contracting out breath, and the brief pause. When you're aware of the pauses, you'll be aware of the next breath. And just feel and understand how the in breath begins, lasts a second or two, and stops. It means it's impermanent. The out breath begins, lasts a second or two, and stops. It's impermanent. Anything that begins and stops is impermanent. So just focus on that beginning and stopping, arising and vanishing of the in breath and the out breath. Even in one in breath, you might notice several sensations coming and going. Or while you're observing the breath, you might hear sounds arising and vanishing. It's also impermanent. It's individual, short sound as it comes and goes. Even other sensations in your body may come and go, and itch, little body movement, an ache or pain. But the impermanent of the breathing process is always going on in the middle. So just take that theme of impermanence as your focus. Dhamma Vichaya, investigation. The Dhamma, this body is a Dhamma, collection of sensation, material aggregate. Or if you have too many thoughts, just observe the impermanence of your thoughts, changing ideas, thoughts, distractions. The mind is sleeping or awake. There's always 3 things going on in the body-mind process. There's the physical sensations of the body itself. Then there's the stream of sounds. And then there's the stream of mental activity. It's cognizing or reacting to those physical sensations or sound. Just keeping the attention anchored in the breathing process. At the same time, one awareness and notice the other sensations or sounds or thoughts coming and going. It's called the flow of impermanence. All these body sensations, sound, thought, just coming and going on their own power. You're not asking them to come. You don't own or control them. Try to contemplate that. Anything that you can experience is one of the five aggregates. Your bodily sensation, or material vibration, pleasant, painful, or neutral sensations they produce. The recognition of individual object perception, and the thoughts about them, the reactions to them, and the sense of I, me, or mine. consciousness. You find anything there at all that's permanent and not changing? Can you find anything or think of anything in your life that you're attached to? If it changed, you wouldn't feel some slight annoyance or sadness? Or anything that can bring lasting happiness. It's not subject to change. Is it your body? Is it your feelings? Is it your perception, thoughts, emotions? Your sense of I, me, your mind? Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Material vibrations come and go. Pleasant, painful, neutral feelings produced by them come and go. The recognition or memory of them comes and goes. The thoughts, emotions, or reactions to them come and go. The ego's history with them comes and goes. This is just a constant stream of flux and change and impermanence of the five aggregates of the sixfold sense field, arising and vanishing, the continuous flow of impermanence. It's what the Buddha called the all. What we call our life is just moments of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, thinking, reacting to all this flow of impermanence. But just underneath all of that coming and going, impermanence, mental chaos, is the parallel dimension of the now, of the deathless state, space of awareness. It's disconnected, can be disconnected from the flow of impermanence. Sound is born, continues a few moments, vanishing, impermanent, or your mental reactions to that sound arose and passed. Sabbi sankhara anicchati. Sabbi sankhara dukkati. Sabbi dhamma anattati. Yada panyaya pasati. Atani bindati dukhi. Esamaggo visuddhiya. All conditioned things, the five aggregates of this body, mind, and the world are impermanent. They arise just to last a moment or two and vanish. And all impermanent things have clung to with ignorance, bring dejection and sorrow. And all dhammas, the conditioned dhammas, as well as the unconditioned deathless state, or nibbana, have no owner or controller. They're not self, not I, me, or mine. When one understands these three characteristics with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity, to freedom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Now place your hands at the edge of your knees. Take a deep, slow breath. Actually, in this meditation, I invite you to chant the word sadhu 3 times. If you want to place your hands together at the chest, we'll chant sadhu on a long out breath. So take a deep breath. Sadhu. 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 And again, place the hands at the edge of the knees. Take one more deep breath and stretch your head back. Pull the hands against the knees, arch backwards. Hold it a few moments. And lift the head up on an in-breath, and on the out-breath, press the head to the chin to the top of the chest. Stretch the neck vertebra. Lift the chin up level on an in-breath. And relax on an out-breath. Put a smile on your face. Smile on your face is to remember that even though everything is in Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, there's still lots to smile about. When you realize that freedom from the ego-dominated awareness. Okay, friends. So this coming week, or on Sunday, for those of you who tune in to the Sunday programs, actually next Sunday, actually I'll be conducting a weekend retreat here at Lo. So I'm going to give the Dhamma talk at the end of that retreat on Sunday at the same time, at the 2:00 time. So this program will, be going on next Sunday, even though only the Dhamma talk will be at the same time, 2:00, and the guided meditation. It's just that, that'll be in conjunction with just a short weekend retreat. So you can use the same Zoom link and everything. Now the following week, we may be having a youth retreat here at the Lion of Wisdom. And so I may not be having one of these Zoom programs next Sunday, because I will be having this youth retreat going on. And the next week also, I will be in Texas. So I'll be taking my first trip away from Lo since before the pandemic started. But so for the next 2 weeks, I may not be giving any Zoom program on the Sunday. Now the Wednesday night program will still have, because I'll be here on those Wednesday nights. I'm just going away on Friday night, coming back Monday. So in for the Texas. So you might mark that down on your calendar.
Is it 27th you will have a class, the 4th and 11th you may not have a class?
That's right.
July 4th and July 11th.
Yeah. And then the 18th, I guess, probably would be the,
Sunday.
yeah, probably.
But Wednesday class will continue and you will announce it.
Yes, that should continue. And I'll send out a reminder in my weekly mailing to remind you of these things. Okay? So anyway, I wish you all the best. Continue your meditation practice. Try to develop, some insights into Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, because that's really the path to liberation. Okay? So mindfulness a day keeps dukkha away. Sutta a day keeps delusion away. And Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya. Buddhaya.